Hi everyone. Motifs are recurring visual elements or symbols that help create cohesion, identity, and meaning in design. They can be shapes, patterns, symbols, icons, or even themes that repeat across slides. Motifs can be broadly divided into 4 categories. First is geometric. These include standard shapes like circles, triangles, rectangles, diamond shapes, hexagons, and so on. Then we have organic or natural motifs. These include mountains, leaves, vines, splotches, waves, sun, moon, and so on. The third category is symbolic. These include arrows and icons. The fourth category is stylistic. These include strokes, grids, irregular shapes like blobs, frames, etc. So all these motifs are a small part of motifs you can get online. I have only collected the most frequently used motifs here, but if you go to Canva or any of the icon websites, you can find countless number of motifs there. Let's understand key benefits of motifs in the context of presentations. Motifs are great at reinforcing themes across your slides. Then repetition of motifs can encourage your audience to make connections. They help boost retention and emotional resonance. In presentations, motifs unify disparate elements across slides. And finally, motifs can improve the look and feel of your slides. With little effort and time commitment, they can elevate your presentations from dull to interesting. Next, let's look at 3 detailed examples of motifs in action, and then we will wrap up by looking at few more examples in isolation to give you some idea and inspiration for applying motifs in your own presentations. So example 1, this comes from my video about mastering first principles. In that we had few slides for cost benefit disassembly. So on this slide we have definition of cost benefit disassembly. This looks fine, but we can improve this by using motifs. So this is before and this is after. I have done 2 things here. First is I have added this checkered background as well as these crisscross lines along the 4 corners of this text. Now once you start using motifs on one slide, you need to make sure that they are consistent across the remaining presentation. So like this background, we need to make sure that we repeat that throughout the deck, as well as wherever we can, we need to repeat this crisscross pattern. So the next slide we have is this timeline kind of a slide where we have these numbers that go from left to right. We can improve this by changing the format of the numbers as well as by adding this checkered background. Now we have added one more motif to this slide in the form of these numbers. So if you have numbers elsewhere in your presentation, make sure you repeat the same format. So on the next slide itself, we have 3 numbers. We need to make sure that we change these to the new format. Next slide is this infographic. Here we have the same numbers again. So we need to change that format and add our usual background. On the next slide, we have this list and a table. There isn't much going on, so we can definitely improve this with motifs. So here we have this gear icon because this list is basically machine components. Then we have this table. Now if you look carefully, for this table itself, we have used the same crisscross pattern from the first slide, and we have used this crisscross pattern again as an icon here. For the next slide, we just need to add our usual background. Next, let's look at example 2. This comes from my video about Gantt charts. For the initial few slides, we talk about what is a Gantt chart, why a Gantt chart, and where to start. Now I had this as a numeric list, but it doesn't have to be. Instead, we can just use a simple arrow motif that acts as bullets for our text here. Next, we have this definition of a Gantt chart. We can use a simple horizontal line like this that anchors our definition as well as abstracts the Gantt chart itself. Then we talk about why use a Gantt chart. Here in the top right corner, you will notice that we have used the same arrow motif and this line to tie our different slides together. Then we have this process flow diagram. We can change these numbers to something like this. Here the numbers are consistent with this table header and the same line that we saw before. Then we talk about where to start. Here again we have a simple numeric list. We can change this to a bulleted text with our arrow from before. Then let's look at example 3. This comes from my presentation about fishbone diagram. So what I've done here is I have shifted these 4 numbers to this left hand side bar and moved this fish icon to the left hand side as well to give us this layout. So now this vertical bar has turned into a menu, and we can repeat this layout across our remaining slides. So this is our first slide, then we have the second one. So you'll see the numbers are changing on the left hand side. I have also added this arrow in place of the standard bullet point. Then for number 3, we show the traditional fishbone diagram, and for number 4, we show the modified fishbone diagram. We also have this circle as the motif here. You will also see these tiny triangles that help with hierarchy and navigation. So you can use motifs in so many different scenarios and contexts. They don't get in the way, yet they improve the overall look and feel of your slides. Finally, let's look at some miscellaneous examples of motifs in action. Now the next few slides are not really related to each other. In this first example, we have text in 3 columns. I have used a simple triangle motif, and for every text, I have highlighted their respective triangle. So this can replace your simple numbers. So instead of using simple numbers like 1, 2, 3, you can represent that in this creative and abstract way. Then we have this hierarchy diagram. Here I have used this simple triangle inside a circle motif as the bullet point for our text. For this one, I have used an abstract version of the quotation mark. For the next slide, we have 3 motifs going on. The first one is this abstract version of quotation mark. Then we have this horizontal line separating the quote from the person. And then we have this red line at the bottom that boxes in our content. Next up, we have the same slide. Here we have the single quotation mark that also acts as a drop cap for our text here. And here on the right hand side, we have this square motif that tells us where the text ends. For the next one, I have used this 4 circle motif for the 4 bullet points. You will notice for every bullet point, the filled circle changes. For the next one, we just have this tiny key symbol here. It's not a lot, but it brings interest to your slides. For this one, we have 2 paragraphs with a title. Now we could have just used the title as is, but if we add these 2 rectangles and the circle, it can add some interest to your otherwise dull text. If you have content on your slide that needs to be emphasized, like photos or this shape container here, you can use these frame motifs. Here is a template with multiple motifs. We have line here, then we have this vertical rectangle that boxes in our text. We have this irregular rectangle for our numbers. Then we have this unique 3D motif here. So we have this rectangle and this darker triangle that creates a 3rd dimension for our rectangle. Finally, this example is from my video about 2x2 frameworks. Here we have multiple motifs. First up, we have these triangles that act like arrows. Then we have these small 4 icons that represent each of these titles. So as you can see, motifs can really elevate your presentations. Think of them like DNA of your presentation. It's there everywhere, but it shouldn't stand out on its own. So I highly recommend using motifs. If you found this video useful, please leave a like and subscribe for future videos, and I will catch you next time.